Bon après-midi à tous. And juste un instant. Ah, there I am. Bon après-midi à tous et bienvenue à cette dernière rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la ville d'Ottawa de l'année 2024. Welcome everyone to this last hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa and for 2024. We are a quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including what's most common, minor variances and consents to sever land. So as you can see, our hearings are back in person. They have now for about a couple of years at least. So, but what's nice about, having gone through COVID is that we now have the opportunity to bring people in online, which you can see that that in fact we do that. And you can always request remote participation just by requesting it through our committee staff. You are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public on the committee's website. So my name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing the hearings today. With me are my fellow panel members, starting with the member de Cueilly, member Coakley, and member Keklikan. So at the beginning, you saw there was an agenda for today. The reality is we can mix that up, and we will be doing that today. And so just note that the panel members have reviewed all of the materials on the applications prior to coming to this hearing. What we like to do at the hearing is, of course, get additional evidence through oral comments from the public if there happens to be some. But generally speaking, everything has already been reviewed. As part of the statutory notice, public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property and before the hearing. And if that hasn't been done, then we need to do either a swearing or an affirmation of that sign posting in keeping with the regulations under the Planning Act. Otherwise, we have to postpone the hearing on the application. I just want to check with our coordinator. Have we got all the stat decks at this point?
We have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. That's good. So the way we proceed is the panel can ask for a full presentation, or we can ask just questions of the applicant. And at that point, we're just interested in getting the questions on the table from the panel members and any clarification from planning staff for the applicant. After that, we start hearing from the public, and I do have a speakers list, and I refer back to the speakers list and start with that, and then open it up to anyone else who might have either online or in person have an interest in the application. If you're not on the speakers list, I would ask you to spell your name or give me your name and municipal address, and you may need to actually spell your last name. And that's for the record. We want to make sure that we have an accurate record. So at the end of the hearing, we can either grant your application, obviously, we can refuse your application, and we can reserve on your application. What we mean by reserving is that we don't hold it for any time. We actually will resume in a hearing of our own post the full hearing in order to deliberate on the evidence that we heard. So generally speaking, there is an application per hearing that we tend to do that. The decision, though, on that, and in all cases, is provided within 10 days of the hearing. And that official written decision is provided to all the parties, participants, and anyone who has requested a copy of the decision. So, okay, turning to our items of business. First off is the declarations of conflict of interest. Is there anyone on the panel who has a conflict to declare? Yes, Member Keklikan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to declare potential conflict for items 3 and 4. That's Osgoode Street and Sweetland Avenue.
All right, thank you very much for that. Is there any other declarations for either this panel, remember, or any other panel? Okay. Confirmation of the minutes. We have 2, November 6th and November 20th, 2024. Anyone, any comments on that, or can we deem them to be confirmed. All right, so both those sets of minutes are confirmed. So now going to our adjournment requests, we have a few. And we're going to start with number 3 and 4, which is for 146 Osgoode and 68 Sweetland. I believe I'm looking for Mr. Freeman. Not sure if Mr. Freeman's here. No, it must be online. Do we have Mr. Freeman?
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Freeman. So you're aware that there's a request for adjournment on your file?
Yes, we are aware and we agree with staff's recommendation for an adjournment.
All right, so Mr. Freeman, we're recommending that we adjourn the sine die, given the fact that there's a recirculation requirement and given the time of year that we're at, it's always a more difficult time to pinpoint dates. So are you okay with a sine die adjournment?
Well, if a recirculation is required, then I believe our only option is a sine die adjournment. So we'll accept that adjournment.
All right, thank you. Okay, so to the panel members, does anyone want to speak to the request for adjournment sine die? Okay, not seeing. Is there anyone in the audience or online who wants to speak to the adjournment request sine die? Not seeing it. So members, all those in favor? Okay, for the record, and with member Keklikan abstaining for the record, the application is adjourned. Sine die. We'll see you again in the new year, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Thank you. All right, so the next one is 346 Roosevelt, looking for Agent Edwards. Come on up, please. So Mr. Edwards, you're aware that there's a request for adjournment on your application
Yes, we're aware, Madam Chair.
and the reasons for that adjournment, and I may need Ms. Horn to help me, but I believe it is a number of things. First, we have what I think is an additional minor variance, which typically triggers a requirement for recirculation in all cases, and that's pursuant to the regulations under the Planning Act. And also, I believe that there's some missing information. So is it Ms. Horn? Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Tremblay. So essentially, we did receive some revised plans, and some of the revised plans, there were some inconsistencies there that we were hoping that the applicant could address, and they were received too late to give staff adequate time to review. However, we would like to acknowledge that the applicant has been working with us to sort of to make changes on the site in order to address some of those concerns.
All right, but so additional time and information is required in order to really complete your review of the proposal?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, thank you for that. I believe those are the two main reasons why we're looking at an adjournment on this application. And because there's a recirculation at this time of year, we're going to recommend sine die. Any comments from the agent or applicant on that?
No, we're in agreement with regards to the adjournment and sine die.
All right, so just one question to you before we go to the public. Was there any consultation with the neighbors on this particular application? Because I'm just noting at this point that there's some opposition and requests for, so can you tell me a little bit about the consultation you undertook with the neighborhood?
Well, there wasn't any notification given with regards to the neighborhood's response other than a day ago from the information that we were provided. So we did not have consultation with the neighborhood prior, as it was based on the fact that there wasn't a need. There was a permit granted with regards to the project, and it's actually currently approved for a 3-unit building on that site, meeting all the requirements with regards to zoning. So this is an attempt to try and request an intensification to increase those units 3 to 6. So that's
Yeah.
what's triggered the discussion.
So, Mr. Edwards, typically the committee expects that there is some consultation with neighbors prior to an application coming forward, regardless of whether or not there's, so So what we've found is, you've got a number of comments that are in opposition. What I'm going to recommend to you strongly is that you take the time during this adjournment to meet with the neighborhood, maybe drop off some letters in a mailbox saying, this is a revised proposal, here's what we want to move forward with, and offer maybe a telephone number or an email or something like that so that they can get back to you. I also see that the Westboro Community Association, I believe, is also involved in this. So I would reach out to them because often they're very good at being sort of the orchestrators of the comments coming back, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
do reach out to them before you come back.
Madam Chair, if I may, the response from the Westboro Association, we did see that in advance and we did provide back to them a series of responses with regards to their questions or queries. And we didn't get any other feedback from them saying that they agreed or did not. But we did have that discussion, yes.
Fair enough. That's good. That's exactly the kind of thing that we like to hear. So with that, then I'm going to go out to the public. Is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to speak to this request for adjournment? Sine die. Come on down. Good afternoon.
On this side, it's done.
Well, it was a shorter walk for you, Mr. Gray.
Tim Gray with the Westboro Community Association. Just a clarification from staff. If there's a resubmission, does that mean all the data and the notice of hearing and all that other stuff is redone online?
Yeah, if it's sine die, then it's a complete,
Okay,
recirculation. And a
because there was
resubmission.
some pretty major errors in the notice of hearing, and which kind of confused the neighbors quite a bit. So the required side yards were totally wrong. Like they suggested that they are supposed to be 1.5 meters, where there's 3 meters on one side and 2.5 meters on the other. That's a huge difference. So we just want to be sure that the data that is resubmitted is up to date. There's a proper survey with the application, and that's all we're looking for right now. And we're gonna, I'll probably be meeting with the neighbors again and just see what they have to say.
So, Mr. Gray, I believe staff did catch most of that.
Yeah,
in
I
our
know they
report.
did. I know they did. But the problem is that, the neighbors are normally just kind of, they're not really involved in this as much as I am. So I noticed that in their report, the staff report, that was all identified, but that comes at the end of really the process. So the neighbors are looking at this, certainly, when that sign goes up, I'm starting to get calls about it. And so, they're confused, why.
So I can tell
But
you,
it's
Mr.
all
Gray.
good.
So, Mr. Gray, they did catch it. So
Yeah,
those
no,
corrections
yeah,
will be made in the
yeah,
recirculation. So I wouldn't worry about that.
I'm worried about the people that live in Westboro and how they are getting that information communicated to them. So, and I want to be sure that it's accurate. So that's the way it's going to come out here. It's all going to be good. But that was my main concern, is that the public gets information, accurate information in a timely manner.
That's a requirement under the Planning Act,
Yeah,
Mr. Gray.
and
So
we
let's,
got that.
we aim to please on that, in that
Thank you
regard.
very
So.
much. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
All right. Thanks so much for your time. Is there anyone else in the audience or online who would like to speak to the adjournment request, sine die? Not seeing anybody. All right. With that then, members of the panel, all those in favor? All right. So for the record, it's unanimous. The application is adjourned, sine die. We'll look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our regular agenda. We're going to start with number 1, 28 Gwynne Avenue, looking for Mr. Hamed. I believe must be online, Mr. Emmett? Yes, Deputy Secretary Treasurer Williams, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, did you want to do the unopposed applications before the regular agenda?
Yes, thank you for that reminder. Thank you,
No
thank you,
problem.
yes. Yeah, so, okay, we can get through this pretty quickly. I think we have two applications that are unopposed, number 2 and number 6. I don't need to see the agents for this. It's 142 Mary and 235 Bay. We have essentially, there's no opposition to any of this. The unopposed applications essentially means that there's, the applications are very straightforward. No modifications required to anything, no questions for clarification. We're all good to go. So with that, I'm just going to do one call out. Is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to speak to either one of those applications? Now's your chance. All right, not seeing anyone. So with that then, panel members, all those in favor of both applications? There we go. The applications are both granted. So thank you very much. Back over to number 1. So and I see we have Mr. Amen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair.
So Mr. Amen, I think we're looking for a full presentation from you on this. So if you wouldn't mind, do you have a PowerPoint presentation?
We did send one in, yes.
All right, so we'd like to hear from you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jacques Amel. My office is at 170 Main Street. We're the agents for the owners who live out of town. The project refers to 28 Gwynne Avenue. Following.
Sorry, Mr. Hamel, can I just interrupt you just for a moment? There's some people at the back of the room that I can hear. If you wouldn't mind taking your discussion outside of the chambers, please. Mr. Gray? Mr. Gray? Okay, so can I get somebody to make, thank you. Your discussion outside. Oh, and Mr. Yalkotsi, you should both know better. So, all right. Okay, so let's proceed. Mr. Hamel, the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this property is located in R1QQ. It's also subject to the MNO. And as a result of that, an SCA streetscape character analysis was prepared, which resulted in this lot being subject to character group A, which does not permit attached front-facing garages by a slim majority in the 21 lots that were required to be reviewed. So the purpose of this application is to request a minor variance to permit an attached front-facing garage on the single-family home on this property. If we go to page 3, to give you a little sense of the context, you can see that there is an area of Ottawa where Gwynne is located. It's right under all the red numbers in the blue circle there. That area, the 417, is on the top left. I guess the western edge might be Holland or Island Park Drive. The southern edge of the built-up community is Carling Avenue. And to the south of Carling, we have the experimental farm. And then further to the east, we have the old train tracks in brown there. And then adjacent to that again, to the east is Preston Avenue. Within that area, there are no significant amenities, i.e. shopping, commercial, retail stores within that entire area, let alone the 400-meter radius of walking distance, which is identified in the blue circle there. Preston, which is a great street to walk along, I guess, and lots of restaurants and amenities, is over 900, almost 900, and that's more than 900 meters away. The nearest transit station is about 790 meters, and there's a green line that points to it just above Carling Avenue in that brown railway track type symbol. There are sidewalks, but only on one side of the neighborhood streets. And there's only one bicycle defined lane on Sherwood that runs between Carling and Parkdale, which is just outside of the blue radius. The only public parking is primarily for hospital use. It's paid parking, and there's actually no overnight parking. And that's right above the civic hospital area, which is near the middle of the blue circle as well. The walkable amenity is probably the best at the experimental farm, and there is some passive amenity just within the topmost portion of the blue circle. In our opinion, since there are very few walkable amenities in this neighborhood, it can be characterized as car dependent. Next slide, please. Under the official plan, there is a specific reference to parking. In section 5223D, where new development is proposed to include parking, DI, it, quote, shall be hidden from the view of the public realm by being located behind or within the principal building. The proposed design, which we'll see immediately after this, complies with the official plan. The official plan references hiding visible parking in a principal building, not hiding front-facing attached garages. And two, that parking shall be, quote, accessed by driveways that minimize the impact on the public realm and on both city-owned trees and privately owned distinct trees. We'll see in a second that the proposal on the next page minimizes the impact of existing trees. We're providing, whereas providing a rear yard detached garage meets the characters group A requirements, but would result in the loss of 5 additional trees. Next slide, please.
Mr. Himmel, I'm going to ask you to, so you've had 5 minutes, but if you could just use the next 2 to 3 minutes to wrap up then.
Okay. This slide shows the proposed house in sort of a skin tone. The lot is in blue. The green, soft green landscaping area is in green. We'll notice that Gwynne Avenue is to the bottom, and the driveway, a single wide driveway, is to the right-hand side of the bottom. There are decks and stuff that have all been proposed to be built on piers to minimize impact on the trees, particularly in the back. There are 2 trees that will be removed. They are both within the permitted building envelope. All the others would be kept. We've also sculpted the building so that we can keep as many of the trees as possible. Next slide, please. This proposal shows a schematic alternative that meets the bylaw, and we wouldn't be here if we were to do this. I think at a glance, it's pretty clear that by providing a detached garage in the backyard would require a driveway that is 8 times the size of the original one, and in so doing also requires a removal of 5 additional trees. Furthermore, the imminent bylaw presently proposes eliminating the SCA altogether, so there would be no minor variance should the new bylaw, once a new bylaw is implemented without any further changes. So the environmental cost here of actually meeting the bylaw seems pretty great from an environmental perspective, from a soft landscaping perspective, from a loss of trees perspective, and from an increase in hard surfaces. Next slide, please. This, I know I'm taking probably more than a couple of minutes. I'll just really try to go through these quickly. The top left-hand elevation shows the front elevation, and a darker line around the frontmost portion of the house, which is the second story and the porch, and beside it is the garage, which on the original drawing maybe looks like it's 2 stories, but it's actually only 1 story high. The bottom drawing shows the same building in side elevation, and we can certainly see the setback of about 4 feet from the front of the existing house. And by the way, the front of the garage now would be over 6 meters from the front property line. Next slide, please. These are just 2 perspectives. The left-hand one shows the garage, and the right-hand side is very small, and you can see the prominence of the porch, which is welcoming, and the second story above it. And the drawing on the right-hand side shows the garage and its splendor, let's say, of being sheathed in more noble materials to make it feeling part of the existing house, along with the massing and detailing, which is all congruent with the rest of the detailing levels on the house. So it's not an adjunct, it's not an afterthought. We really integrated it into the expression of the house. Next slide, please. These next 2 slides look at streetscape character analysis and how it derived, how it assessed the percentage of front-facing garages versus not front-facing garages. The long and short of it is that we've shown in our analysis on the left-hand side that we're shy of a majority, thus permitting us to have front-facing garages by only 2 out of 21 lots. The city of Ottawa assessed the streetscape character analysis and came up with a difference of 4 lots. Next slide, please.
So, Mr. Amell, can we just pause there for a moment and just get a little bit more information from you on that? So I see that the starred property is the subject property. So if I'm looking at, and maybe we can just zoom in on that plan, because I want to be clear about where the other front-facing garages are in the context of your subject site. So is it possible to get, yeah, all right, so there we are. So Mr. Amell, based on that, then I'm looking at the red star, is that on the, okay, that was prepared by you, yeah, figure 10. Okay, so we're looking at the right one. So just in your words then, which ones, and I'm seeing they're numbered, which ones actually also are front-facing garages?
Okay, so I'll make the connection for you. Firstly, what I do want to say about this is there is a guide in terms of how to determine which lots to choose. It's pretty clear that you effectively end up choosing 11 across the street and 10 on the same side, 5 on either side of the subject property. You can see with the numbers here, 1 through 5, if we start on the same side of the street on the right-hand side, those properties have been labeled 1 through 5, then the star, then 6 to 10. So those are the 5 on either side of the property that the guide that is published directs us to choose. And then across the street, we need...
Okay, so just pause there. So Mr. Amell, do all of those have front-facing garages or not?
No, of those, the number 1, 2, 3, and 5, 7 and 8 all have front-facing garages. And then across the street, we're showing the 21 lots, or the remaining 11. And out of those, I'm just trying to make the link here. It's actually easier to see maybe on the next slide, but I think 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 have front-facing garages.
All right, okay, that's very helpful. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and then So we followed the we followed the guide as best we could. When we submitted and received the planner's response, they actually took 11 on the same side as the property and 10 across the street, and they started anyways, the lots were quite different, the ones that were chosen. And they ended up with, I think, only 7 front-facing, because the lots that had front-facing garages were not included in their assessment, in a nutshell. Maybe it'll help if we go to the next slide. If we do zoom in on this one, it might be a little bit clear. What we've done here is taken the Committee of Adjustments purview in terms of what constitutes the context of affected neighbors, and showed a 60-meter radius. And then we use that to establish a third context to try to determine the character of the neighborhood. The short story is that as per that graph below it, or the table below it, there are 40 lots in that area, so more than 21. And of those 40 lots, 19 of them, is that right? 21 of them have front-facing garages, for a percentage, for those who like that stuff, of 52%. If this were the context that we would be, if this were the context we would have to analyze, then we would not be here, because we would be in the majority character group of front-facing garages.
Mr. Hamel, just to be clear though, when we're talking about front-facing garages, the planning tool to use is the streetscape analysis. So I understand what you're saying, and maybe if we were considering lot areas, that would be a different story, but and I appreciate the analysis that you've undertaken here, but it seems to me that your previous slide is actually a better slide upon which for the committee to consider, because to me, just the circle around doesn't meet the streetscape analysis requirements. So just want to, but I do appreciate that you did that analysis, because it's still helpful to see what's in the surrounding area anyway.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. And I agree that we were required to do these analyses, the 2 that you see now, and we did. And there's still a discrepancy in spite of the pretty carefully worded guideline. And even with those and the interpretation by the planner, it's slightly different. In any case, our argument is that it is a mixed context, no matter which one you take, and that's really the characteristic of the neighborhood. So, if we go to the last page, in our estimation, the 4 tests are as follows. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. The next page, yes. The conclusion is that in addressing the 4 tests, the proposed detached home with an attached front garage and driveway meets the intent of the official plan, as it is a permitted use in the general urban area and is providing hidden parking within the principal building, and the proposal and driveway minimize impact on the public and private streets. 2, the proposal meets the intent of the zoning bylaw and contributes to the neighborhood's mixed character. The home's design meets or exceeds all the performance requirements for a detached house, including the attached garage, front-facing garage, and is consistent, in our opinion, with the character of the neighborhood's established mixed parking strategy context. The requested variance is minor, and it's aligning as it aligns with the neighborhood's mixed streetscape character. The streetscape character analysis reveals that only 2 additional lots would have been needed to change the dominant character permitting the front-facing garage, i.e. 9 out of 21 lots that have a front-facing attached garage instead of 11. The deviation is minor and does not significantly impact the overall character of the neighborhood, given that it's also a car-centered neighborhood. Furthermore, the larger streetscape character of 40 lots has 21 front-facing garages, which would be the dominant character. And finally, the impact of the proposed development is desirable for the neighborhood. The proposed front-facing attached garage is integrated in a way that minimizes its prominence, softened by recessing it from the porch, the second floor, and other front-facing design elements such as the columns, the walkways, and canopies. The finer design expression of the garage harmonizes and integrates it with the overall dwelling expression, reducing its prominence and avoiding a harsh or imposing appearance, and ensuring that the proposed home's positive contribution is positive to the local character. The proposed front-facing garage, as designed from massing to detailing, fits in with the neighborhood character and its mix of garages, as well as, importantly, minimizing negative environmental impacts by otherwise meeting the bylaw with a permitted detached garage. In our opinion, the 4 tests have been satisfied, and we urge the committee to approve our variance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hamel. And I think I noted that, in fact, your conclusion is part of your report on page 16, so we have that too. I think the committee's had a chance to read your report, so that's good that you gave us a recap. Also want to say thank you for that report. Your report is fairly fulsome, comprehensive, and the committee always does appreciate that. So thank you very much for putting that amount of effort into the submission. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the committee members for questions. Anyone? Member Lecuyer, go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, my question is for planning. So I see that in the evidence provided, we've got one streetscape analysis that was done and another one, and it was a picking and choosing of properties. Other than what the agent has said about in terms of they chose a guideline and it was a choice of 10 versus 11, 11 versus 10, is there, does the city consistently say, well, we always do 10 on that side and 11 on the other, or is it was just how the planner who approached this file took it that day? Could you elaborate?
Thank you, Ms. Lecuyer. So essentially, the planner will follow the guidelines, the manual and the SCA. Sometimes there are, it's usually based off of the lot pattern within the neighborhood. So depending on where the subject property is in comparison to the intersections, sometimes that will yield a different approach if you're going through the manual. So.
Okay. So would you, I guess as a follow-up question, would you see that another planner could have followed the same guidelines and had come to the conclusion that the agent did in a choice of the properties?
It is possible. I haven't, I wasn't the planner who did the SCA check on this one. So it's difficult to speak to it, but it does happen.
Okay, thank you.
So just a follow-up question on that. So I thought it was pretty simple. You take the subject property, you do 5 this way, you do 5 that way, you look at the property across, and you do 10. Is that not how it works? I thought that was the formula.
Thank you, Ms. Tremblay. In general, that is the formula. But there are sort of some intricacies depending on where that subject lot is located in terms of, maybe the property across the street is not actually quite lined up with if that makes sense.
All right, so which would you, in your opinion, meets the intent of the guidelines more closely, the one undertaken by the city or the one undertaken by the applicant?
So essentially, if there's at least 6 lots, between 2 intersections where the total number of lots on both sides of the street is less than 21, but there are at least 6 lots, including yours. You are correct in saying that on a basic level, the bylaw says to count 5 lots to the right and 5 lots to the left, and then 1 across the street in general. But in this scenario, the one that's appropriate is at least, sorry, I think it's on page, I can pull it up if you give me a minute. Thank you.
So yeah, that would be helpful. Okay, so while you're doing that though, is there any other questions by the panel members? We're going to give Ms. Horn a minute to get things, but I'm not sure if anybody else had other questions. Yes, member Kecklerkin, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a different perspective. I have a question for the agent. I know the focus of the discussion has been on the front-facing garage, but in your presentation and in your report, the alternative analysis shows sort of pits trees and tree canopy versus the garage. And I'm just wondering if that's if there are other options that were looked at, to save the trees and provide some form of parking that would be, I guess, similar. I don't know if the existing home has parking on the side or not, but I couldn't tell. But it seems to be quite a challenge, the green space, tree canopy versus a garage. That's the way I'm perceiving your argument and your analysis. Am I sort of off base?
Mr. Amell, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through the chair, for your question. In a nutshell, I think that's what it came down to, because in our alternative scheme, we had worked pretty hard from the get-go to sort of broad stroke the property to see where a house of the size that our clients felt they needed could fit. So we did sculpt it, as I mentioned, to keep the trees where they were closest to the home, and looked at minimizing the rear yard from impact of buildings. So we did look at the attached garage as per design, as per our client's wishes, also with our initial broad strokes of laying out where the house could go. Because when we did show non-attached front-facing garages, no matter what we did, we were forced to go past the house and then either come back into the house for an attached garage from the rear, which would have meant that the driveway would have been even longer in order to be able to drive up and then turn around and come back into the house. This one seemed to be the most straightforward. We have a detached building, that's okay, and we drive towards it. And in order to still get into it, we need that extra width of driveway, and we need to go past the back of the house. So it ends up.
Mr. Hamel, maybe the site plan, if we can get the coordinator to put that slide back up, because I think that member Kecklerkin is raising where I was going to go as well as part of the discussion on your file. But if we could have that site plan back up, maybe we could see, where the opportunities between the two extremes might be. So we'll just wait on that for a minute. Get the site plan back up, and I'm sure member Kecklerkin has more comments.
Well, just thank you, Chair. Just an observation in the meantime. I know in my sort of opinion, the front-facing garage and the streetscape analysis goes beyond a mathematical, numbers, formula and calculation, but it's about street design and the kind of community that people want to have and to live on. And it's really about the visual amenity of the neighborhood. So it's not just numbers, but it's what kind of neighborhood and street, street, the community wants to have. Just an observation here.
Just to the coordinator, I believe the slide we were looking for is the one after the site plan where there was an option shown with the garage in the back. Can we have that one up? Yes, all right. So I think that's what we're talking about, this discussion, if I'm not to put words in Member Keklikan's mouth here, but I believe we're talking about the difference between what's being proposed and that extreme scenario with the garage completely at the back. And I think what we're asking to the agent, Mr. Hamel, is did you look at possibilities in between there that would have lessened the impact on the trees in the back?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a great question, and we did look at, I think, 3 other scenarios to start with. But all of them that involved a driveway along the side of the building to get to the back of the building, either within the building, in other words, go past the building, turn around and come back into it to park the car in a protected way. We can see even from this sketch, there's a light pink area and then the rear deck. That's about the depth of a garage. And then the gray beyond that, which represents the driveway, might not be quite as long, but it would be certainly in that pretty much amount of paving that would need to go back to go past the driveway and then to come back into the driveway at the back of the house. So the driveway itself, within, let's say, 3 or 4 feet, maybe 5 feet, would be the same regardless of that, of whether we park in an accessory building beyond it, the way that we've shown here, or into the back of the house where we would provide a kind of backyard entry garage. The clients wanted a protected area for their cars. We can do this that meets the zoning bylaw, but sacrifices those 5 trees. And even if we were to bring that one back and drive straight in, we would be able to save only 2, we would still lose about 3 or 4 trees because of the root zone area and the excavation around it. So yes, this is the other extreme, but in a likely scenario to develop this rear yard access to parking, whether it's in an accessory building or in the back of the house itself, would be impacting those trees.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hamel. I'm just going to ask Member Keklikan if he has any other follow-on questions. All right, so Member Lucky, but I think Member Lucky, would you like us to go back to Ms. Horn at this point to see about the streetscape analysis and how get a sense of which one we should be going with at this point?
Yes, and I do have a follow-up for planning further to that, so let's keep going there.
All right, over to you, Ms. Horn.
Okay, great. Thank you. So essentially, where your lot is located on a block between 2 intersections, where the total number of lots on both sides is less than 21, but there are at least 6 lots, including yours, but less than 11 lots on your side of the street, and at least 6 lots, but less than 11 lots on the opposite side. So the total is deemed to be sufficient, and it goes, it would be using 146 bracket C, which is a different diagram than the one that the applicant used, which had what you were mentioning, Ms. Tremblay. But ultimately, the outcome of both of these approaches was the same in this scenario, I believe, and I think the intent of the SCA is talking about the dominant streetscape character analysis, and when the introduction of another front-facing garage will contribute to making that the dominant character in this situation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Horn. Member Lecuyer?
Okay, follow up to that. In the application, there was a lot of evidence provided of others on the street. I'm looking at 17 Gwynne, 19 Gwynne, as examples. The others, again, the pictures are rather small, so I can't tell for sure, but at least looking at item 2 and 3 from page 11 of 16 of the application, so 17 and 19 Gwynne, those look like very, very recent builds. How did these people get their front-facing garage?
Thank you, Ms. Lecuyer. So essentially, they would likely have had to come before the committee for minor variances. That's my understanding.
Been on the committee for 2 years.
And nothing, no?
Not that I could recall. Again, maybe these were longer than I was here, but I'm just seeing like it appears from the evidence in this application that a number of applications, a number of recent builds, recent developments have gotten their front-facing garages, and these guys aren't able to. So it was just an observation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It could, the approvals could predate us, Member Lecuyer. It is quite possible that did happen, like on, on an earlier time frame, if you will. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that, Ms. Horn. Any other questions from the committee? Yes, go ahead, Member Coakley.
Not so much a question, because my question has basically been asked and sort of answered. I'm a little frustrated, though, that the streetscape analysis criteria are not clearer. I mean, on behalf of applicants, it makes it very hard to know, okay, do I start counting here or do I start counting there? And it makes it very hard for us when presented with, well, if you start here, it's this, and if you start there, it's that. It makes it very hard for us to choose which one is the better one. I mean, I do note in both instances, it indicates that the predominant character is not streetscape, is not front-facing garages. And my review of these very small pictures, I take Ms. Lecuyer's point that there are a couple of new builds there that do clearly have front-facing garages, but it doesn't look to me as if the predominant character is front-facing. So it's more just an expression of frustration than anything else.
All right, thank you for that. Is forestry with us by any chance? Ms. Young. Good to see you, Ms. Young. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thanks. So you've been following the discussion about the garage, if it were in the back, and the impact on the trees. In your review of the proposal, was there any discussion about maybe, a lesser, so I guess a lesser scenario where the garage would be maybe into the home further back without having an impact on trees? Like, I'm trying to see whether or not you had any discussions with the applicant about trying to, meet the spirit of the zoning bylaw a little better without impacting on trees.
Thank you for the question. We did have some back and forth before the hearing, and we didn't honestly get into a lot of detail on, what other options there were. I'm just trying to read my email at the same time. Yeah, I mean, I think there possibly could be something in between. It isn't something we got into the details of, but it looks from the drawings that have been posted that there may be a compromise in the middle somewhere. I don't know the ins and outs of the construction and how it's possible or where the access can be, or, if an attached garage further back on the house would work. I don't know, but it is something that we would be willing to have further discussions on.
All right, because it did seem to me that there was some wiggle room in the back based on the location of the trees, but the diagram we were looking at is fairly small. So I just wanted to see, if in your opinion, we brought that garage either further up, is there still a space available where the trees wouldn't be impacted? And I think I'm hearing there wasn't enough analysis to really be able to make that determination. Is that correct?
Yeah, and in terms of the amount of wiggle room, I mean, one of the trees in that back corner is quite large. It's 80 centimeters in diameter, so that would mean 8-meter protection zone from the tree. So that would be pretty limiting in terms of how far back the garage could go. I do think there could still be options, but I don't know how that works again with the design of the house and how to enter. And if it's proposed to be a double car garage, then that adds some complication as well.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Member Lecky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one last question for planning. And now it went away. Sorry. It happens sometimes. Maybe it'll come back to me.
It will come back to you and you'll have another opportunity. So no worries about that. Just want to close off the discussion then with the panel members. Any more questions? No? All right. I have no one on my speakers list. So is there anyone in the audience either here today or online who would like to speak to this application? All right. I'm not seeing anybody. So with that, Member Lecuyer, back to you.
I remember, if planning could confirm, when I'm looking at it says bylaw 2020. So does that mean it was enacted in 2020? So therefore 2020, anyone was built before 2020, therefore or anyone who had a building permit already approved, but maybe the building hadn't been built. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this might have happened.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I saw that as well afterwards, and so that explains why there are newer builds, because it was only introduced in 2020. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, if there's no more questions from the panel, Mr. Amel, you have a couple of minutes to do a recap at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think there's not much to recap, just to remind the committee that we did reach out to the local community association. We had a conversation and there were some questions about infrastructure regarding lot grading, but otherwise the president was happy with our presentation and have no further comments. We did reach out to Ms. Young, and she gave you her comments. We reached out to Councillor Leeper's office, no comments from them. And of course, on file, you have Hydro, Rideau Valley and Ministry of Transportation, with no comments either. I guess in a nutshell, the context, I think, in this neighborhood is certainly car-centered because of the proximity of shopping and other life amenities not being nearby. So there's no question that a car is required. The next question, as Councillor Ketlican, I think, mentioned, is the character of the neighborhood, of this building and the neighborhood. We feel that hiding the car in the way that we're proposing it is superior to seeing a side laneway all the way to the back, and mitigating all the impact that rear yard, whatever way we do it, parking would end up causing. So in our estimation, this is inappropriate. We're not providing a huge subdivision of properties, lots of additional infill. This is really a single family home for the owners who are a little older and feel that they need to have their car protected and attached to the house. And this is the best way that we could provide that in our experience. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Amel. I am going to guess, and I think it's not much of a guess, we talked about it before. We are reserving on your application. As you know, that means that you will get the decision, but you just will not hear it from us today. So thank you for your time and happy holidays to you.
The same to you. Thank you very much. When can we get, when do you expect the decision to be available?
10 days.
10 days? Thank
That's
you very
correct.
much. Happy holidays.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, that takes us then to application number 7, I think, all the way to there. Looking for, I think who I've already seen, the agent, Ms. Clark, for 250 Shakespeare.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, I don't think the committee is requesting a presentation from you on this. So I'm just going to open it up to questions at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, member, okay, go ahead, please.
Very talkative today. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. My question will be for planning. Looking at the planning report, I think there's a section called discussion and rationale. There's 3 sentences. 2 of them look pretty boilerplate from what we've seen before. So I'm just curious if you could elaborate a bit more on how you felt that this application met the 4 tests, and in particular, if you could focus on minor, meeting the test of minor.
Hey, thank you, Ms. Lecuyer. So when looking at reductions in lot area, we're often, for these infill apartments, we're directed to look at the soft landscaping proposed, if there is adequate room for planting, and bike storage, as well as waste storage. And from my review of the site plan, they did meet all of those, and were able to provide, you know, a site that functioned well despite the minor variances being sought.
Thank you.
So Ms. Horn, that was excellent explanation as to why you believe that in fact the functionality works for the site. And I'm not sure why it's not in the report, because that would have been really good information for us. So just maybe for the next time, if you could, you know, just a few words about that, because it was my question as well, is where's the functionality in all this? How do we know that everything else that really needs to happen on this site can be accommodated? And you explained it beautifully in words. Would have been nice in the report, though, if you could think about that. Sorry, member Coco? Oh, I see. Okay, so Ms. O'Connell, can I get back to you? Yes, go ahead, Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you. I appreciate the chair's question and Ms. Horn's response. I just wanted to point out to the committee that our resources are really stretched in terms of the review of applications to the Committee of Adjustment. And so the role of staff is to identify where we see concerns. So I would appreciate, you know, if the question is related to the 4 tests and an explanation, that it be directed to the applicant as well, as instead of the onus on staff to defend their description of no concerns.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. I sense there's a longer discussion.
Fair enough.
On some of that. And it actually there is, because, and maybe, you know, to Ms. Williams, who's on the line somewhere, we have a secretary treasurer, but she's not with us in the room today. Maybe we could add that as, you know, we were talking about some of the review of the development application processes and that kind of thing the city is undertaking right now. Maybe we could have an update on that at the next committee, you know, the professional development committee meetings, and then we could talk about that. And we appreciate that there are stretched resources, Ms. O'Connell, no doubt about it, but it, you know, it just, the functionality is so important to us, and we look at the kind of lot area reduction that's being proposed as part of this application. And the first thing that tweaks is, are we talking over development? Is it okay? Is the functioning there? So that's why the question, we all had the same question. Ms. Lecuyer raised it. So we got our answer, which is good, but I'm just suggesting maybe some things we might be able to add. But anyway, I do appreciate your comment though. So we'll have a larger discussion about that. And I see Ms. Lecuyer has a comment or question.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I'm also not a planner. So sometimes it's great that the applicant might provide a planner's opinion, but I also appreciate to know what the city's planning opinion is as well. So that's all I would add.
Okay, back to other questions on this application at all? No? All right, well, then we can go to the public portion on this, and I have absolutely nobody on my speakers list. Is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to speak to this application? No, not seeing anything. So Ms. Clark, did you want a couple of minutes to recap?
Certainly, I think I would just echo city planning staff comments. When looking at a reduced lot area and also a reduced rear yard, what we're really looking at is, can the typical functions of a rear yard continue to operate in a successful manner despite requesting this reduced setback? And our review, and obviously city planning as well, was that yes, it can. We're not sacrificing on waste management or soft landscaping or trees or outdoor amenity space. And of course, not providing parking on a lot this size given its area. So those really would be the main functions of a rear yard that we're looking to accomplish. And we feel confident that the proposal does that despite the requested variances.
All right, thank you for that. Then committee members, are we ready for a vote? All right, so all those in favor? Okay, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you.
And happy holidays to you as well.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That brings us to number 8, which is 242 Park, looking for Mr. Geddes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm going to get you to introduce who's with you as well today.
My name's Frankie Geddes, and
I don't think okay, you're going to have to maybe just bring the microphone closer to you. All right, thank you.
my name's Frankie Geddes, and I'm here with my colleague Najmin Mughal as well.
All right, I don't believe we have, we don't think we require a presentation, right? Okay, so I'm just going to open it up then to the members for questions regarding your application. Anyone? All right, just give me a moment because I just want to go back to. I make notes to myself and I have to go back and read sometimes, so. Okay, yeah, I do have a few questions myself, and it has to do with some of your variances. I think I know the answer, but I just need to get confirmation from you. So when you look at variance C and variance D, talking about reducing a rear yard area to 15.63, which is only 6.14% of the requirement, whereas 25% of the lot area. So that's a big number. That's a big difference. And we see the same sort of difference when it comes to the soft landscaping area. I think I know what the answer is, why that's the case, but can you explain it to us, please?
In regards to variance C on lot A, that's one you're referring to, lot A or lot B?
Yeah, lot A. I believe there's same kind of thing comes up on lot B as well. So, but if you can just explain the two, that'd be great.
Yes, so for variance on lot A, it's already an existing, we're retaining the existing triplex, so it's kind of hard to adjust what's already there at the moment.
So that's regularization then of the existing condition. So that's fine. So that's for both C and D, correct? So how about, here's my question then, and you can think about this. Which one of the variances, A through I, is regularization of an existing condition?
So that would be A through E. So lot A would be the retained triplex that's already under the regulation of the existing.
All right, anything at all F to I? That's the new condition, right?
Yeah, F to I is the new condition. That's the proposed development.
All right, so looking at G and H, where we have half the requirement essentially for reduced rear yard setback and reduced rear yard area, can you explain those two?
So for G would be the reduced rear yard area of the 2 meters that we're proposing versus the bylaws requirement of 4 meters. So essentially here, we compensated for that to be more compatible with the Planning Act, Section 45, subsection 1, by providing more amenity space in the front.
Okay, and for H, is that the same answer?
And then so H kind of falls under the same kind of notion because it's still the rear space. So that's pertaining to the rear yard area. So granted, we provided, that's more or less on the green, usable green space. So again, in the front side yard and the corner side yard, we reduced it by 24 meters to be able to adhere to that reduction there.
Perfect, thank you. That's my questions. Anyone else? Yes, Member Coakley.
Just in a bit of a way of a follow-up to those questions, Madam Chair, I get that by assuming we consent to the severance, then you're left with a building on a lot that doesn't comply with the bylaw, so you need the variances there.
Yes.
But what if your severance line were somewhere else?
So
like you have a choice is being made, right? That we want to draw the line here. If we moved it, and I'm sorry, I'm using right because of the I'm looking at the diagram here. If you moved it closer to
Lot A.
Carry on Street,
Yeah.
You might not need as many variances on the retained lot. Is that fair, or would they probably be the same anyway?
So that would be a fair assessment. However, it would be the same only because of the fact that the setbacks will still be required because now we're moving into the setback area. So it's going to create a different variance at that time if we were to reassess that for Lot B.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you for that answer. Anyone else? Member Durkee.
Maybe I will not direct it to planning. I'll direct it first to the agent and then the planning can answer after. This is a corner yard. Sometimes corners and big corner lots can this is why these, when the Planning Act and zoning's all been made, corner yards are kind of a little tricky. Can you elaborate about that in the context of this as well, please?
So in the context of this, as you said, corner yards are a little bit more tricky to work with because see here we have to the right of the site plan where Carillon Street is. This is the longer lot line. So because of that, we've kind of made sure we put the building facing the front, right? That's the front facing. That's why we have to do 267 Carillon and add that in. And then we're using the corner lot as the side yard to provide more green space, and sorry, softscaping is the actually correct term. So we wanted to work a little bit more with that because with the corner yard, we can not necessarily get away with that, but that's what makes more sense with the design that we're proposing for this development.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
All right, anyone else? Just over to Ms. Horn and then on, so I did note that your comments originally where you had some concerns regarding to reduce lot size requirements in the rear yard, that kind of thing, that you were worried about some functionality in that case. Are you satisfied? I think you are based on my reading on your comments. So I just want to confirm that you're satisfied now that based on the variances requested that the functionality of the site is works.
Yes, I am satisfied. Thank you, Ms. Tremblay.
All right, okay, with that then, no names on my speakers list. So is there anyone in the audience here, there's not many people left, but, or online that may want to speak to the committee about this application? All right, I'm not seeing anything, so it's going to be back over to you, Mr. Geddes, for a quick wrap up.
Okay, so for the wrap up here would be, first of all, we'd just like to say thank you guys for your time and seeing us again today. The way we would like to look at this project is that it would be compatible with the the policy, the provincial policy statement and the zoning bylaws with regards to the minor reductions that we're looking at for the 9 variances that we are asking of you guys, and that we do provide, I believe, rear. So I'll recap in a more accurate way. So the requested severance and variances for 242 Park Street and 267 Carillon Street meet all 4 tests outlined in section 45, subsection 1 of the Planning Act. They are minor, uphold the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and represent desirable development for the area. The project provides a balanced and increased density and sustainability, enhancing the community's housing options while maintaining the neighborhood character.
All right, thank you for that. So before we go to a vote, I just want to make sure that you've had a chance to look at all the conditions and that you're okay with the conditions of consent.
Yes, so we did see the conditions of consent with regards to the next steps and what this approval will be based on. That's what you're referring to, right? The conditions prior to this, yeah. And we've shared it with the landowner and the landowners in agreements as well.
Perfect. Okay, with that, we're going to go to a vote. Then members of the panel, all those in favor? Okay, so for the record, your application is unanimously granted. Thank you very much and happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you very much to all you guys and happy holidays. And I'd just like to take this quick second to give a shout out to Rhonda Fargo at the Committee of Adjustments, because she was very helpful for newcomers like ourselves to give us guidance on how these applications work, and just also Penelope Horn as well, who was able to give us a clear understanding of what to do to be here today for you guys.
We very much appreciate those comments, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's well received.
And happy holidays.
You too. I believe that brings us to our very last request, I guess, from Mr. Ibrahimpour in relation to 24070 Mutual. And I think it's a change in a condition that was imposed. So, Mr. Ibrahimpour, I think you must be online, as you don't seem to be with us today. Coordinators, do you know if he's there? Yeah, okay, good to see that. Can we also bring up on screen the location plan? Do you have that, just so we have context?
I could retrieve it in a few minutes, Madam Chair.
All
Or a few
right.
seconds, hopefully.
You may have time. You may have time. So I still don't see Mr. Ibrahimpour though, so.
I have promoted him to panelist, Madam Chair, if he could accept that invitation.
Is there anything on our side that we can do to promote him?
It appears that he has accepted the invitation to be promoted to panelist. If he could possibly turn on his camera and unmute his microphone.
Hello.
Hello, we can now hear you, but we can't.
Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know why, but I had a hard time. I keep raising hands, but didn't want to come up to.
All right, so we're going to need a little bit of a rationale from you as to why you would like to see modification to the wording of the condition.
Yes, because the property had been built and we have some time issue in order to come up with the timeline that we promised the owner. That's one part of it. And the other part, it was the cost issue that we had to come up with several $1,000s for the study. And at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything since we are very, very close in just 20 meters from the main artery road, that the noise has an issue, and we have to add on to the basically to the title that everybody that is going to live there, they have to be aware of it, that they have to be precautious about it.
So Mr. Ibrahim, for my reading of the difference is a little different, perhaps. In one case, we're adding a noticed title, which is a warning. And in the
Right.
other, we're requesting an actual study that will deal with the building components for the construction. So,
And the construction is done.
so it is a completed building, is what you're telling me?
Yes.
All right, over to Ms. Horn then, if we can get maybe some of your assistance on this. Can you tell me why, if the building is already constructed, the condition read for a noise study, which is to implement building elements to reduce noise?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So from my understanding, the timeline was that the consent application was heard in 2023 in September, whereas the building permit was only applied for, it was applied for in October 23 and issued in June 2024. And from our sort of data information system, it does show that the inspections have been done for the framing of the house, but that's the most recent permit that we've, or part of the permit that we've seen. And so in terms of the actual condition, you know, it's planning's preference that we retain the condition that it was approved under.
All right, thank you, Ms. Horn, because if the framing is the only portion that was done, then there's still time to get massing in the walls on the exterior. There's still time to worry about the windows and that kind of thing. However, if we're way past that point, Mr. Ibrahimopour, can you please
Yes, all the
elaborate?
windows had been installed, and all the services are in place, and we are just waiting for the siding to be done when the weather permitted.
So, Mr. Ibrahimopour, were you aware of this condition for a noise study before you went that far?
No, we haven't. Because for the severance, it takes time to get to the place. But as you know, when we go and do the construction, when the framing inspection is done, that's the time that the whole envelope is completed.
Yeah, Member Coakley, go ahead.
Okay, I'm having a little difficulty understanding what's happened here. It sounds to me, maybe I'm wrong, it sounds to me that a condition was imposed and someone, I'm not suggesting you, Mr. Ibrahimopour,
yes,
someone effectively ignored the condition or chose to proceed without paying any attention to it. If that is the case, I am definitely not in favor of waiving the condition, even if construction has started. A condition is a condition.
So I agree with that. The only thing, so Mr. Ibrahimopour, it was a decision to sever the property made and applied for after the building permit had been submitted for the construction of the building?
Yes, usually we just get, in most of the cases, we just get the building permit and then we go for the severance. So that's just the building had been, and when we are going to apply for the building permit, in most cases, I never had any case that they brought that option first.
All right, so that brings me back to why, when we were hearing the severance, was there a requirement for a study? So again, sorry, Ms. Horn, I'm again confused, because if the development was construction was already underway, Okay, so your answer was it was the framing, and that's as far as you'd gotten. So putting that condition made some sense at the time. Okay, if I got that right?
Thank you, Ms. Tremblay. So these are notes from my colleague who wasn't able to attend today. Essentially, from her notes, the consent application was heard on September 6th, 2023, and the building permit was applied for on October 26th, 2023.
So after the conditions went in. Oh, okay. Oh, so Mr. Ibrahimopour, then that
Oh.
means you didn't pay attention to the condition and the way that it was written.
No, it was okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the information. Because this property, someone else was building it, and halfway they handed to me. So I just took over the property to finish just halfway. So I had no clue. I didn't pay attention to the detail on the paperwork, that when it was permitted and not. But yes, absolutely, when you're saying I didn't pay attention on that one, but not on the building. The framing was done when they gave it to me. I just continue for the windows and other stuff, that the services, and we are just going to go to the pretty much the end part of the finishing part.
You know, so Ms. Horn, again, I'm confused, because if the consent required a noise study and then the application for building permit was submitted or applied for, would Building Code Services not have flagged the requirement for that noise study and withheld the building permit until that was done?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's difficult for me to speak to the building permit process because we are a bit removed from it. From my understanding, and I'm not sure if this is what happened in this case, is when essentially prior to the consent, you know, an applicant could apply for a building permit and obtain a building permit for one of the buildings. So if this is a case where there's two buildings being constructed, then that could explain it. But I'm not sure if that, again, I'm not sure if that applies in this case.
All right, thank you, Ms. Horn. Ms. O'Connell, did you, can you enlighten us a little bit, maybe?
Just to say that the condition that was imposed by the committee was related to the consent itself. So it's not something that Building Code Services would review and hold up a building permit application for. It would prevent the consent from moving forward if it wasn't satisfied, but not the building from progressing.
So what's the trigger then for Building Code Services to know that there's a requirement for a noise study in the implementation of mitigation measures?
If we'd potentially put a condition on the minor variance application, which is difficult to do as well, that would prevent the issuance of the building permit. That again is another separate discussion about how we can do that, because we've received advice in the past that Building Code Services, when they review applications, has to review their applications under the Building Code Act and make that determinations, which is why we typically don't put conditions related to variances themselves. That they're tied to the consent application, which again prevents that from moving forward.
Okay, Member Coakley, go ahead, please.
I think we're all scratching our heads here. So if I'm sort of hearing and perhaps reading between the lines correctly, this condition is tied to the consent, which is the severance. So the condition could legally, in quotes, be ignored if the owner of the property decided not to proceed with the severance and came back to us in a year or so's time and asked us to reverse the severance, as we have done previously, not in a situation exactly like this. Is that a sort of a theoretical scenario in which this sort of goes away? Because I guess, you know, what's the point of imposing consents conditions, if conditions can be ignored? And again, please, I don't want to be taken as suggesting that it's Mr. Abrahamov who's been ignoring the condition. I have no information to suggest that, but it would appear that someone along the way has either decided not to pay any attention to the condition or deliberately decided to ignore it, because otherwise, why would we be here today?
Any further thoughts, Ms. O'Connell?
Member Coakley is not wrong, incorrect. I can say that essentially we're dealing with the conditions related to the severance. So there's nothing to prevent this building to be completed, but it would hold up. The lots have not been legally created and can't be created until that condition is fulfilled.
All right. Okay. I think that does explain a few things. Ms. Lecuyer, member Lecuyer.
Yeah, my question's for the agent. Did you mention timeline and cost? What was the estimated cost for a noise? I'm not familiar with how much it costs to get one of these studies done.
Yeah, the noise study, it's cost around $7,000, and it takes over a month and a half, usually about 6 weeks minimum. And the problem is that at this point, even if they come up with some comments on it, it's not much that we can do. And it's very obvious that it's going to have some impact. And that's why I said, okay, at this point, what we have, because as I mentioned, it was another company was looking after the project, and for some reason, they just walk away. And I just took over at the end of November. So it's not that it was not me that much that I was doing it. And that's why we start working on it, and we see, okay, at this point, there is no point for us to go ahead and do the study. And we can just agree with all the outcome at the end of the day that we have to come up with the information on the deed and everything else that we have to make aware of these issues, because we are very, very close with just, as I mentioned, about 20 meters from the MacArthur Street.
All right, thank you for that. So Ms. Williams, can you come back for a minute? Can we see you've got a question? All right, so and I just had the same issue. Just lost what my question was going to be to you. I guess maybe any guidance from you on how the committee would deal with something like this?
It would be at the member's discretion if they feel the condition should be changed.
All right, other question. Here's what I really wanted to ask. Sorry, it came back to me. I don't need to do a public portion to this decision, right? We don't need, all right, just want to
No,
make
there's
sure.
no notification for a change of condition.
Okay, excellent. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't offside there. I'm thinking we're reserving. Oh, go ahead, Member Coakley.
I definitely would need to reserve, but I'm almost of the view that I'm not even sure I have enough information to make a decision. I'm inclined to recommend that we adjourn this matter, either to a date fix or sine die, and request that when it comes back, and I don't know who this request should be directed at. I mean, I appreciate maybe isn't city staff, it maybe isn't Committee of Adjustment staff's responsibility, but that we actually get a completely detailed timelines of exactly what was presented to whom, when, where, and then we might be in a better position to determine whether or not to grant some sort of relief. Again, my inclination is a condition's a condition's a condition, and it should not be waived just because somebody appears to have chosen to ignore it. But again, I repeat, Mr. Abraham, who I'm not in any way suggesting you're responsible for this.
No.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go to Member Lecuyer.
Yeah, I would concur, just to balance the oral submissions as well as written evidence. And if we could put those two together and maybe adjourn to the next meeting. And it sounds like you have everything that you are speaking to. If you have this all in documentation, I think as a whole, we can maybe make a decision with that evidence.
I agree. So I concur. More information always makes for better decision making. But who's actually going to put this together? And I'm looking for Ms. Williams again, if we could. Is that something that staff, like we're looking for a timeline, obviously. Is that something that committee staff should be putting together, or is it planning staff? I'm looking for guidance as to where to direct our request.
I believe the request should be directed to the agent.
All right.
They have
Okay.
onus
I
to
just
submit a
thought
complete
maybe because
application.
planning staff would have better access to our records.
The
better
onus is on the
better-
agent
The agent.
to provide a complete application.
I beg your pardon?
So I was just saying the onus is on the agent to provide a complete application, and then that information would be verified.
All right, well, then that means that Mr. Ibrahimpour would have to go back to planning staff and get the records in order to provide us
Sure,
that
just-
timeline. So I'm gonna go back to Ms. O'Connell. Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate that I just asked that questions be directed to the applicant on the past discussion. I'm just trying to save some time in terms of deliberation because our colleague, Ms. Linker, had provided us with some of those dates as part of this discussion about the change of the condition. So I can run through a few of those dates now and see if that's sufficient information or what further would be required from the committee.
Member Coakley, does that work for you?
I mean, it might be. I guess I also would appreciate seeing a copy of the original application. You know, are there any other conditions that we imposed at that point? I'm afraid I don't recall whether I was involved in that decision back in September of 2023 or not. That's kind of the, you know, we get a decent package with our applications for variances and a decent package of information with our applications for severances that allows us to at least look through it ahead of time, identify any questions we may have.
You were absent. I pulled open the record while we were
there you
waiting.
go. So
I was there. I remember this one.
All right, so Ms. O'Connell, then, if you do have some of those dates already, is it something you can put into a quick little briefing note that will provide us with what we need to know on this application? I guess we're looking at, you know, the dates that the building permit was applied for, the date that the building permit was approved, the state of, and I think we heard from Ms. Horn, the state of the building condition at the time of application for consent. Those kinds of things would be helpful to just have maybe wrapped up in a few bullet points. Is that possible?
I could say it right now if you prefer, or I can send it in writing after the committee hearing.
So if we were to reserve on the decision and make the decision based, if the city's comfortable and they have all the information at their fingertips and were to just forward it as a written record just afterwards, I would be inclined for us to deliberate on that and then not having to adjourn.
Yeah, the issue I think we have with that is that the applicant has to have an opportunity to speak to it. So either, you know, we wait, we get that information, we adjourn to the next hearing. I don't think we have to go very far, and we can go to the January meeting. And just have those bullet points that would be shared with Mr. Ibrahimpour, and that way if there's any differences in opinion, that can maybe be worked out before the January meeting. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but go ahead, Ms. O'Connell.
Would you like me to I can provide those 3 dates right now? Or do you want me to send them in writing after?
Sorry, Member Keklikin has a question before we go there. Go ahead.
Yes, more a comment than question. I support the idea of adjourning because there seems to be gaps in the information, and I just hearing it quickly, I think we need to process that and to trace it and trace the linkages between the consent, the building permit, and the whole process. Something is missing, and in my mind, I don't feel comfortable one way or another making a decision right now.
Okay, so I think that That's what we're going to do. We're going to adjourn to the next meeting, which I don't have for January. Coordinator, does anybody know what that date would be in January? It's not the
Sorry,
first one. It would be the second weekend.
15th, yes,
The
January.
Yeah.
15th?
Madam Chair, it
Sorry,
would be
Member
January
Williams?
15th.
Or sorry, not Member Williams. It's getting late.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Deputy Secretary Treasurer, what would that date be?
January 15th.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to adjourn, Mr. Ibrahimpour, this item to the 15th of January. Now, why don't I just be clear with planning staff, like we're trying to support you here on you know, on your recommendation that we stick with the original wording. We just need a little more evidence to give us the comfort that that's the right thing to do. So I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind putting some bullet points together and just resubmitting for us for the 15th. Member Decaye, go ahead.
As well, just to the agent, to make sure that the evidence of demonstrating that that another company had this file before they got involved. So just
Sure.
making that linkage to have proof of that, I think that would satisfy me.
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so Mr. Ibrahimpour, you're going to have to work with planning staff. I'm going to get them to provide what a summary of the way they see the events of the day on this application, and then give you a chance to review it, ensure that you also then provide, as Member Decaye has asked, your side with regards to when you took over this project, so we understand sort of the conditions under which you were you became engaged in this process. I will say this, though, I mean, typically speaking, Mr. Ibrahimpour, our expectation would be that you inform yourself about what is, you know, what it is that you're in fact undertaking. So if you can, you know, might need a little bit of rationale to show that you may have done that due diligence. We don't know. Just tell us what the activities were.
Sure, I'll just get all the document together at the same time so I can just speak much more accurate regarding the timeline and everything else. And for that, one of the points that I was going to bring up, that we don't want to really remove the whole condition. We want to just a little bit change on the wording of it, that's all.
Right now, we're either going with option A or option B. So it's either the current wording or the proposed wording of the conditions. So I would prefer we stick with that unless there's a compelling reason to do otherwise. And then make a decision in January. Member Coakley?
Sorry, I just wish to suggest, though, there's actually, it appears to me there's actually an option C, which is the city's draft wording, which is on the next page. They're all similar, but they're not identical. And I mean, maybe in discussions between the agent and the city, they might be able to come up with an agreed joint recommendation to us that would be helpful.
All right, so I will take that under advisement. So the current wording of the condition is A. If there's a revised B, then let there be a revised B based on discussions before January 15th, and let's see what that looks like.
Okay.
Is that agreed? Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, so I think that's our decision. That I don't think we need to, do we need to do a vote? Well, all right, so let's just, for the record, all those in favor of adjourning this matter to the 15th of January, 2025. All right, so that is adjourned unanimously to that date. So Mr. Ibrahimpour, we're going to ask you to work with staff and wish you the best of the holidays.
Thank you. The same to the whole panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. With that, I don't believe we have any other items of business. Are we adjourning? Yes, we're adjourned. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.